afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. This is Jean-Hugues speaking. Let me transition to my face so you can see me. There we go. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today. We are Monday, 13th January. We are starting, 3 minutes a bit late. I'll give a bit more time for a few people to arrive. We started a bit later because LinkedIn streaming decided that we would not start on time, but that's fine. Thank you everyone for joining for this webinar. So this webinar will be on DORA, on the Digital Operational Resilience Act. We'll be talking about the golden circle of DORA. We'll be discussing a bit more about what is the Digital Operational Resilience Act. We'll be also, of course, talking about why do you have to comply to the Digital Operational Resilience Act, and finally what you need to do. And of course, because I like to keep things a bit practical for those who know me, I will attempt my first acrobatic flight without any parachute, or actually I have one where I will be performing a live demonstration instead of a pre-recorded one of our application, showing you directly what actually you can get from our application. But even more important than seeing what is important in our application, what can be done in our application, it is first important that you understand what is required with DORA. So first of all, maybe before we get into that, I will start with presenting myself. I'm Jean-Hugues Migeon. I'm French, as you can probably see from my name. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Anove International. I'm a registered data protection officer, both in France and the Netherlands. I'm part of the European Data Protection Board, a pool of experts in legal expertise in new technologies. And I had various roles where I was a data protection specialist or an information security officer in various companies. Why am I speaking to you today? It's also because, I have this dual approach to regulation from my lawyer's side, but also as a business owner and company owner, where I see also that compliance is not always easy. Plus, when you have limited resources or you don't necessarily know what to do, you can have the technical skills, but you don't necessarily have the understanding. My goal of today is to make sure that, for all the, let's say, technical people, that they can understand what's the legal reasoning behind, but also for all the legal profiles that are joining us, that they also understand what could be the technical implementation of the regulation. First things first, I like to start with numbers. DORA is the Digital Operational Resilience Act. It was first voted in 2022 and will enter into force in, January 17th, 2025. And if you are currently watching with this webinar and you did not know that and you have to implement DORA, I can tell you it's a bit late, but you'll see that we can actually do it in approximately a day. Not a day, but at least we can get you up to par in a day, and then you have to run your entire program. But DORA is actually applicable to financial entities, financial companies, financial and insurance activities. So starting with a couple of numbers, we can see that there is 759,000 companies in the financial and insurance activities in Europe, which altogether employ 4.9 million people and represent 1 trillion euros of gross value added. Of course, there are more financial entities in France, Germany, Spain, and mostly in terms of value added, trusted by some large companies, but we see that there's a lot of smaller companies, especially in the field of insurances, and all of them have to be, DORA compliant. by the end of this week. So, well, the problem that we have today, and that actually most companies have today, is that first, there is a lot of regulations that you need to comply to. DORA is only one of the many that you have to deal with. So if we look into, let's say, in the past and what's coming, we can see that we had a couple of tech regulations, so regulations that are, well, taking into account technologies and are focusing on technology, that have been voted and prepared by the European Commission and by the European Union. Started, well, of course it started before, but for, let's say, our recent scope, started with GDPR in May 2018. By the way, all these dates are the dates of entry into force, not the dates that they were voted or that they were approved. So GDPR 2018, we have then the Digital Markets Act for November 2022, then the Digital Service Act in August 2023, then we had the Data Governance Act in September 2023, and in 2024 it continued with the Critical Entities Resilience Directive and the NIS2 Directive that entered into force last October 17th, both of them. Today, or actually in a couple of days, we'll have the Digital Operational Resilience Act in January and the EU AI Act that will enter into force for the first part of the requirement on February 1st. I must apologize in advance. I had a bit of a cold, so I might have to drink as I have a cough, but it will be fine. Okay. So EU AI Act, and then, well, they are still pending approval, but we have the e-privacy regulation that we could expect maybe in 2025, but we've been saying that every year since 2018. And the European Health Data Space that is still pending approval. This one would be maybe more expected for 2026. Okay, so that's for, let's say, to give you an idea of the landscape of the tech regulation landscape that we are currently facing. Now let's dive in the core of our topic for today, which is the Digital Operational Resilience Act. Well, first, let's call it by its real name. It's the Regulation 2022-2554 of the European Parliament and of the Council of the 14th of December 2022 on digital operational resilience for the financial sector and amending regulations number 1060/2009, number 648/2012, number 600/2014, number 909/2014, and 2016-1011. I will just call it DORA for today, if you don't mind. But I think it's always important, that's also the lawyer in me, that you know actually exactly to which text we are referring to, but we will be calling it DORA or the Digital Operational Resilience Act. I'm not the only one, it's not my invention. So, well, first things first, who's concerned? If you are not in that list, well, please don't leave, it's still important, because you might be a critical service or a critical supplier for one of the DORA companies, and then, well, you are actually subject to DORA. So we have banking and payment services, so we have banks, payment companies, such as PayPal or Stripe, account access providers, so like all these budgeting apps that you have, or e-money providers, where you can see, if you watch a couple of YouTube videos, some Revolut advertisement. We have investment and financial markets, so investment companies, the stock market infrastructure, so everything that participates to establishing the stock market, financial data platforms, hedge funds, real estate investment firms, crowdfunding platform, think about Ulule in France, or Kickstarter, or GoFundMe, crypto assets and digital markets, such as crypto companies. Actually, at the end of this our presentation, we'll be talking about a use case, a business case that we had, and one of our customers who, well, was very kind to accept that we share publicly, who obtained actually their crypto trading license. Retirement and insurance services, insurance companies, of course, retirement funds, And I was saying it at the beginning of the slide, ICT and third-party services. So if you are offering IT services that are deemed as critical for any of the above, such as cloud computing or cybersecurity, so managed security service provider, then you will be considered as a critical third party, and you will have to be DORA compliant or demonstrate that you have elements in place for DORA. So, what is DORA about? Well, first of all, DORA is 64 articles, but not all of them are actually regulations or requirements for financial entities or for companies. We can divide them for simpler reasons into 5 different topics. You have chapters in the Digital Operational Resilience Act, but this one is slightly different because we grouped them per more operational topics. Just it is actually a bit more handy. So we have risk management, ICT risk management, which is actually chapter 2, and third-party risk management. Basically, your practices in risk management that you already have, but well, a bit more. Otherwise, it would not be a whole new regulation. Reporting of ICT incidents, reporting of operations and security payment related incidents, digital operational resilience testing, from which the regulation gets its fancy name, which is pen testing and threat penetration level testing, information and intelligence sharing, where you can share information of cyber threats, well, with the supervisory authority, but also with other financial entities. So we say foster cooperation. And last but not least, third-party management. We could put third-party risk management inside this one. I prefer to put it more with the risk management. But third-party management will be mainly revolving around managing your contracts with this third party, making sure that you have the relevant information inside your agreements, and especially maybe a DORA addendum, and manage risks related to third-party services providers. And there, well, actually, how do you audit them? So that's part of your third-party management. Before, well, you run away and you get scared. I see we lost a couple of viewers just after this slide. Let me remind you of Article 4 of DORA, just not to scare you, the proportionality principle, where basically, well, it is what it is proportional. So when assessing compliance to the Digital Operational Resilience Act, the supervisory authority will take into account the size and the risk profile of the financial entity, but also the scale and the complexity of their services and activities and operations, and will actually assess the necessity of implementing certain requirements and certain elements. So they shall consider basically the size and the complexity of your business activity and make sure that, well, they are not putting too much on you. That doesn't mean that you should not do anything about DORA, but, well, there is some leeway. It was already the case with GDPR, but it was very quickly forgotten by a lot of companies who went into a very complex programs, and it's often also forgotten by companies who do consulting by the hour, and who often, well, will offer you very complex, maybe very complete, but very complex program that might not be, well, necessary for your organization. But that's actually usually a conversation that you want to have with the supervisory authority, and I'll come back to that a bit later. So, first question, why do you have to comply with DORA? Well, first, I would say, well, there are some advantages of complying. Well, better operational resilience, you adapt better, you know better what's your environment. You have more trust and confidence from your customers, and that's actually very important. We've seen, well, more and more data breaches, and we see that there is an impact on the services, and especially when it comes to financial services, people are looking a bit more into how secure is their information, because if you lose people's money, well, I'm sure they will get mad. At least would be the case with me. Well, regulatory compliance or legal protection, it's a bit the snake biting its own tail, but it's basically you also mitigate the risk of getting penalties, fines, or any legal action. I have to say, DORA, unlike, for example, GDPR or the EU AI Act that's coming, doesn't have set penalties or set fines, like, for example, 3% of the turnover or 20 million. That's actually not the case, but doesn't mean that there won't be any fines. It's probably because it will be determined by the supervisory authority themselves. It's of course improved competitiveness and market access. Actually, it's, if I rephrase it, it's your license to operate, because, well, being DORA compliant is actually more than necessary, because it's a requirement. Otherwise, you might lose the ability to exercise your business activity, and we cannot accept that, right? So that's why complying to DORA will definitely be important, and preparedness for unforeseen events, well, that's also part of the resilience. Well, that's the advantages of complying. Now, what are the risks? Well, first things first, increased vulnerability, because you might be dependent on third parties. They might disrupt your activities, and, well, as good as you can try to do, if you don't have the IT services within your company, you won't be able to do much, and it still will be you who will have to answer to your customers. Well, third-party failures, fine and penalties, we already covered that. Loss of trust and market perception. Actually, I think, that in financial services, even more than other industries, reputation and trust are even more important, because that's also how you get customers to stick with you and actually get your financial services. Missed opportunities for growth. DORA is also a huge opportunity. Could have been actually in the advantages. But if you start with DORA, well, if you are compliant with DORA, then you can also put it forward. We said it a lot with GDPR, we say it a lot with every regulation, and it might not, let's say, always find its public. But I have to say, it's actually, you do have some advantages, because if you are transparent, you know exactly what you're doing, you, well, have an opportunity for growth, not only for your end business activity, but also in your infrastructure, because you know better about it, and you know where to spend your money, you know where to spend your resources. And, well, in red sanction and license revocation, that's actually the worst that can happen to you. You're not allowed to offer your business services. Now, let's do a small self-assessment, because I'd like to make this webinar a bit interactive. So we have a small survey, a small self-assessment, where basically 5 questions, maybe 6 questions, where you can scan this QR code and you can basically answer all 5 of them. That will tell you pretty much if you are ready for Friday, at least. And if you're not ready, well, you still have 3 days to contact us. But, well, let's first things first. Let's do it. Let's do this assessment. So in our case, we have an incident response plan, or actually, I don't know. We often test our cybersecurity measures. We do it annually. Do we regularly monitor and assess our third-party service providers? Well, always. We all do that, right? Does your organization have automated tools to report and respond to operational incidents? Basically, well, do you communicate? Maybe you have ServiceNow or Jira, you have tickets, and that's actually quite important. I came actually across very recently about a solution like this called ICE board, ICE board, for in case of emergency. Very interesting tool. I'm not partnering at all with them, but I found it was quite interesting. Are you aware of the exact DORA requirement? Well, I hope so. Well, if otherwise I would not be giving this webinar. And then, last but not least, do you have any legal specialists to help you with DORA? Well, if you have legal expertise or technical expertise, but well, you can also be looking for support in any or both. You can put your email. Basically, we will contact you if you put your email. If you don't want to put it, that's also fine. You can be just a viewer in the shadows, just lurking into getting some information. In my case, you can just contact me directly. I'll put my email. You'll see it in this presentation a couple of times. And there we go. So, well, I think I left some time to do it. So now we can see some results. Time for it maybe to load. Too many requests, so we had too many people. Okay, that was just a try. We can just dive into the next step. We'll get back to the results at the end. I'll share differently my screen. What do you need to do? Actually, I think a lot of people who are here today wants to know, okay, well, good, we read DORA, we know a couple of things, but what do we need to do, or what do you say we need to do? I'll put in between parentheses in priority, because, well, we're looking at the next 4 days. And next week, actually, same day, on the 20th of January, we'll be looking back at what happened and if, well, the world ended by then, or at least if your world ended. And well, we'll let's say dive a bit further into the application, or let's say the regulation. I'll be actually accompanied by a fellow partner, Jean-Hugues, who is actually a lawyer, expert in IT law, and actually with whom we've worked on previous cases on DORA. Okay. So, where to start, what to do, let's get ready. So first, we'll be looking at the 2 elements. What can you do in the coming 3 days or 4 days, if you still count Friday until midnight? Well, you can do a gap assessment. You need to know where you stand. That's very important. We did not reinvent the wheel here. You need to know that actually, well, at least where you stand regarding DORA and what you have, because DORA does not come from, well, out of nowhere. DORA relies on existing systems or existing processes that you may have. I'm sure you have risk management. I'm sure you have third-party management. I'm quite certain that you have a governance framework, if not in information security, at least in IT. And then, well, maybe automated automated monitoring, intelligence sharing you might not have, but these are also easier to implement because, well, it's also quite new. Last would be pen testing or the digital resilience. Organizing a pen test, well, you will definitely not get any company to perform a pen test by Friday. You need a bit more time. But if you schedule one and you manage to discuss a bit with your supervisory authority, you definitely will get away with that. Map your existing processes and control. As I said, you have a lot. It's very important that you map it with, for example, if you have an ISO 27001, it's actually quite interesting, the overlap. So you can map it to your existing process and your existing controls, and that will actually show you that you are quite far along. If you have ISO, for example, or if you have a SOC 2 assurance report, definitely you are well suited to go to the next step. Once you have done that, so that was for this week. So for the 17th of January, so that if, for example, your supervisory authority in the Netherlands would be AFM, if AFM comes to you and tells you on Friday, well, show us what you did, you can show a gap assessment, you can show the mapping of your processes, and you can say, this is where we stand, this is what we would like to do. We didn't even mention making a plan, but at least knowing where you stand, that's, let's say, good enough. You should have started earlier, but I'm not going to blame you. Everyone waits for the last minute. Once this is done, next week, you start identifying your critical assets. So map out all the systems, all the applications, all the services that are used in your business activities that are essential, at least, to your business functions. What do I mean by that? Well, you can rely, if you are more technical profile, you can rely on your CMDB, on your asset list from your ISO 27001. But you can also, well, list all the softwares that you use, all the types of IT machines that you use. That will help you in basically identifying assets, and then, well, that's how you will link them to your business functions, and then you will start to know which ones are essential. For example, if you have a server where all your, let's say, SaaS, financial SaaS application is running, that might be critical, and the company providing that server might be also critical as well. So that's for assessing, or let's say identifying, the critical assets. Then you assess the risks. I'm sure you have, if you are already active financial entity, you definitely have a risk management. Just extend this risk management specifically to DORA. Know where you stand. I'm sure actually that you already have a risk assessment done on that. Identify the internal and external risks to the systems, to the data, and also for the non-compliance to the regulation. You can start developing an incident response plan. So that's not necessarily next week, that's now coming in the coming weeks. Incident response plan, very important. Low-hanging fruits, if you don't have, very simple. You need to, well, know how to detect and respond to an incident. You need to know who you want to contact, and make sure that you know at least how you can recover from a cybersecurity incident. You can go, depending on which country you are, but you can go to the national cybersecurity agencies of your country. In the Netherlands, it's the NCSC, like also in the UK. In France as well, it's the ANSSI, ANSSI. And basically, they often have guidelines on how to implement an incident response plan. Prepare a business continuity and recovery, disaster recovery plan. Very important. You might have one. If you don't, you should have one. As soon as possible, you will set, for the technical part, RTOs, recovery time objectives, and RPOs, recovery point objectives. That's for your services, but there's actually a couple of more information you need to get there. Inventorize or inventor third parties. Well, I mean, I said that goes, I think, hand in hand with your critical assets, but you need to know with whom you are dealing. I'm not even yet saying who is critical or who is not. I'm just saying know with whom you are dealing. Adjust your contract templates. Get your legal team. If you don't have a legal team, get a lawyer, a law firm to help you. You basically need a DORA addendum. Same way you had a data processing agreement that was usually put as an addendum to your contracts. Get a DORA addendum that you will sign with your third parties. And, well, last but not least, it's actually not over. Last but not least, you have to have governance and reporting. Rely on your existing reporting lines, of course. You need to have qualified individuals. So make sure that you have people who understand IT and who understand what an incident can be, and make sure that you also have an overseeing committee on it. Okay, so, well, at least if you did the first part, you did the theory, you implemented it, but DORA is actually about resilience. It's also about performing, running it at least once. So that's actually part also of the implementation. Let's say that everything before was more policies and having the right documents. I didn't mention, but there are a couple of policies. I mentioned them a bit after. But make sure that you have this theory done. Now, running it, you need to assess these third parties. So that's where you define the criticality. How do you define criticality? Well, actually, DORA is quite self-explanatory in that regard. You need to have companies that are providing cybersecurity services or ICT services that are essential for the business function that you're providing, so the financial services. Make sure that with all these third parties, at least the critical ones, that you sign a DORA addendum. You have to review them. So signing and categorizing them is one thing, but you need also to audit some of them to make sure that they are complying with the contractual requirements. It might be, if you use already some third-party, like big third-party companies, that they are already, they sent you a DORA requirements, you can also audit them. That's part of your rights under this regulation. Actually, under each regulation is part of your rights, but especially here. Test your business continuity plan. So you set it up in the first phase, but test it. Make sure that, for example, you have a failover test for your RTO, recovery time objective, or your RPO, recovery point objective. That's very important, and you need to have the results of this test. Test your incident reporting and your lessons learned. Here, well, either you wait for an incident or you have an incident. Well, it's not always the case. If you don't, otherwise, at least do a tabletop exercise. So what I mean by a tabletop exercise is have someone preparing a scenario where you have an incident, and then you try to see if everyone know their role, know what they should know or who they should contact, and make sure that they are contacting the right persons. Make sure also that the board gets the information, or if you are the board, that the right people contact you. This is how you perform tabletop exercise. Rely on continuous monitoring solutions. Well, there you have already quite a lot, and I'm sure you already have some logging and monitoring solutions, but you need to slightly adjust. Here we are a bit more into the technology. I put it always a bit further at the end, because most of the time companies have the required skill either internally or they use third-party services. And if you use third parties to deal with your ICT infrastructure, usually they have the resources. So it's a bit less difficult to implement. It's more about you getting the information. And last but not least, the pen test. Usually you want to have the pen test performed, so you have to plan it a bit up front, but you want to do a pen test and a vulnerability scanning at the end, once you have already implemented all these measures. You could do it before, but you have a whole program where you need to implement and adjust, so it doesn't make sense to do it at the very beginning. So from, well, my experience, I would do it at the very end, so that you know, well, if actually from the results of the pen test, if there are some elements such as incident reporting or maybe the continuous monitoring that you need to adjust. Now, I will focus on the gap assessment, because that's what you have to do for this week. Gap assessment, well, first, here on the left you have actually an example of a gap assessment we perform for a customer. For each requirement, you need to make sure that you list your policies. I put a couple of them: logical access control, logging, network security, business continuity management, vulnerability and patch management, and so on and so on. List the documents that you have, not only policies, meaning crisis communication plans, risk management framework, contract template, because this will be used also as evidence for demonstrating compliance to DORA. And assess your resilience. Do you have automated logging and monitoring? Do you have third-party review? Do you have maybe exit strategies? These are all topics that you go over gap assessment. Exit strategies, SLAs, very important, involve legal in that part. Okay, moving on. We are already at 36 minutes, 33, because we started a bit later. How does Anove do it? And actually we'll do it based on real facts. Well, I will start with my, let's say, my, with my jump. Actually, I realized, did I do it? Let me see. Yes, sorry. I saw that I had missed a slide, but very quickly, what you want to know is, what documents do you have? Who is responsible for each requirement? How do you monitor it? When should it be done? Or how often should it be done? Is it yearly? Is it monthly? Is it quarterly? And why does your organization have to implement it? Sometimes, and that's part of this proportionality, sometimes you might not need to implement it because that's not necessary. You might not be so critical, for example, for your service. Okay, so onto the demo. Now I'll switch into demo mode, it's time for a transition. I hope it works very well. First time I'm testing it, but normally you should see my screen. So we can see I'm in Bing Bang Web 13.01, specifically done actually for our demonstration today. Here the idea is that I will show you that, well, that we are in a completely empty environment. What I'll do is that, well, I'll add DORA as part of our requirements. So you can see here that we have DORA, we have all the requirements, all the articles. I will add it into the scope of my company. Now, once it is done, I will go into my compliance dashboards and I will see that now I have 213 requirements for DORA, that I have no coverage at all, and I will start looking at the articles. Of course, well, I can't go through them all, but I will go towards the third party. Article 33E. So if we look here, it's a contractual arrangement that you have to use for ICT services. I'm not going to read the entire article. I'll just add controls. Well, here we can see that if you already have a control framework, you might want to link it. But, well, we don't have any control framework, so you can rely on us helping you or telling you what you should do. You should have third-party contract requirements and a review of the third-party services. We can add them both. Let me see. I'll assign myself. There we go. I'll add my controls. It will just add the two controls, the two requirements, and voila. We have two controls covering the requirements with an average maturity of 1, just been created. They are initial, and we can see that they have 0.47 coverage of DORA. Of course, let me show you, because you won't do it end by end. You will be able to go to settings and then basically create from here all the relevant controls that you need at once. Basic is if you start from scratch, not to, let's say, scare yourself off. Intermediary will be, you have most of the coverage, and advanced is that if you are an advanced company that already has some automations and you want to go further, deeper into the requirements. So we have 98 controls. Coming back to our compliance, coming back to our DORA, so I can go to my third party. I was 33E, there we go. And I'll take my first control, TPM05, third-party contract requirements. We can see that my control has been created, that there is already a description, don't have audit success criteria, but we are at initial. Now, what's very important is that we can see that it's mapped requirement. Now, if I had already, for example, ISO 27, I'll show it right after, you could see that I could map it to ISO 27. I'll just upload very quick evidence. I'll say, for example, I have my policy on reviewing third party. There you go. I'll just put the link to here, https://Anove. Okay, I can put there. There we go. I have my evidence. Now, what I want to do is, of course, I want to assess that control. That's part of my gap assessment, right? So I'll perform a self-assessment. Do I review my third parties? I can see, well, I have at least a policy. I can review the evidence. I can say, well, had been reviewed. It's okay. Now I can define the maturity. Well, it's defined, but I don't have evidence that is being performed. So I'll just leave it on repeatable for now, and I'll put it there. Repeatable. Then I save my draft. Do I have a conclusion? All good. There we go. Saving the draft. I can create a following up task, which is, for example, assess Anove AI. There we go. I'll assign myself, send them the questionnaire, and I'll just put the date for end of the month. I finalize my self-assessment, so we see that now it has been done. If I come back to my control, we can see now that my control has been unrepeatable. Voila, first part of the demonstration, I did not crash on the ground, it worked. Now, of course, you will want to demonstrate to the supervisory authority that you comply to DORA, or let's say the progress that you have to do. And you have to do that on Friday. Remember, it's coming on Friday. So what you want to do is generate an in-control statement. I'll go to report, create the doc, and for now, I'll just let it turn because, well, it goes through all the requirements, look at all the controls. We have only 2, but we can access it a bit later. Now, if I come back to my presentation, just to show you very quick, we can see, we have listed all the DORA requirements. There were 213. They are subdivided. We saw 64 articles, but we subdivide them into requirements. We cover the third-party requirements. We assess the control, and we are currently generating an in-control statement. Now, let's go to the second part. How do we manage these third parties? Well, we thought about everything. Let me switch back to the demonstration. Let's transition. There we go. So, going into my third-party management module, I can actually add, well, I will add Anove AI. Actually, to help me, I already prepared everything I needed to do. Let me see. There we go. So, I have a description. I can tag them. They are, let's say, DORA. I can add them as critical third party. Their role, well, we are a supplier. You can say that we are ISO 27001 certified. There we go. We are located in the Netherlands. And we are in actually Koningin Raad 2019, 2514 AB, I think so. There we go. And I just added there. So now we are listed as a critical third party. So that's the first step. Listing, remember, if we look into our roadmap, it's listing the third parties. Now, we need to know also the services that we provide. So going into the services, I can say that I'm providing Anove AI, well, that I'm having Anove AI service. There we go. Are we critical service? Well, we are kind of participating to the cybersecurity, at least for the first phase. Do we have a service level agreement in place? Well, yeah, of course, we always do it. Do we have any related processing activity? That's actually a link to the privacy management system, but we don't use it there. Is there any subprocessors? Well, there of course are, but we won't put it there. Is it a cloud service? Time critical? No. Is it, it's a cloud infrastructure, not hybrid? Is there a exit strategy possible? Yes, it's possible. What would be the impact? Well, catastrophic. It would be catastrophic at least for you or for us. Is there any alternative service provider? Yeah, of course. You can use Microsoft Excel, but would you get all these requirements? Not so sure. And cost of service, about 5K a year. There we go. We have our service. Now, going into the next phase, which is the contract. So we listed the service. Service is critical. We provide, for example, also consulting, but consulting would not be critical. Now, of course, we sign one contract, so it's slightly different from the service. The contracting details will regroup multiple services. So let's say we sign for both consulting and the Anove AI, so the tool. We sign today. Well, it will be for a year. There you go. What would be the renewal date? Well, also for a year. Then termination notice. You need all this information are actually mandatory fields or mandatory information you need to have for DORA. Who would be the contact person? Well, probably would be me. Who would be the approving person? Well, it would be me, but it would be someone in your own company. What is the applicable law? We often sign from Dutch contracts. Is there a DORA addendum signed? Yeah, it's signed. Is there a data processing agreement? It's also signed. And there we go. We have our contract created. So now you can see that it actually in just a couple of minutes, maybe 5 minutes, we have the entire information about Anove AI. You can also send assessments directly, you can assign tasks, but you can see that we have the whole information. So that's, you see, What you can do, well, the third party you don't need to do before the end of the week, but this is something that you definitely will have to perform before the end of the, as soon as possible. We do, of course, you have the risk management, you have everything you need, all the tools to comply with the DORA regulation. Coming back to our DORA regulation, I said on Friday you need to have this at least to be able to demonstrate or to answer the supervisory authority about your compliance to DORA. Well, so far we are only at 0.47%, but you would be able to provide immediately a report saying, hey, look, Bing Bank Web, we have an in-control statement, compliance coverage, well, 0%, not that great, can do a bit more efforts. And here we can see that, well, we have our requirements, and there we go, our report. You can send it directly, directly to the customer, to the supervisory authority. Okay, coming back to our presentation. So you see what we have done is we have added a third party, we have listed the services, and we listed the contract and the required information. Now, we are slowly approaching the end of the webinar. I forgot to say, but of course you can always put comments, you can always send us questions. Feel free to do so, but that's not a problem. If you want to see a bit more into details what we have in place, we have actually a whole video on how to actually implement DORA with our tool. So it's about 5 minutes video, and you'll be able to see what it can do. Now, there we go. I'll go here. Voila. So, what I wanted to do before we close the webinar for today is actually talk about the reference case that we had. I mentioned that at the beginning of the webinar. Company called BitState BV. They are located in the Netherlands, in Oldenzaal, and they are one of the only 5 companies that have been approved to trade crypto assets and to manage basically cryptocurrencies in Europe. They obtained MiCA accreditation, is for the market for cryptocurrencies, crypto assets, and basically they needed to. It entered into force 31st of December 2024, and as part of getting this certification, they needed to be DORA compliant. Only 5 companies achieved it in the whole Europe, and well, we will not take the whole, let's say, recognition for this. It was a team's group. We actually worked with our law firm partner Turing Law, and also with another law firm called Finway, plus BitState did a tremendous work, but I have to say that we are very proud to be part of their success. So we take a bit of their success to ourselves. So just to help you get a bit of insights on how did it happen. Well, very simple. They became one of the best in class in half a year. We started in May last year, 2024, where they contacted us and we performed a gap assessment. Same way that I showed you. Actually, even less automated because, well, we were also learning. We reported 89 actions we needed to implement in order to be DORA compliant. In June 2024, time to get everything prepared, we started the phase 1 of the action plan that was set up. So that was approximately 44 actions that were implemented. The idea was to implement them throughout the summer, and basically that's it was all the first phase that I was showing you, creating policies, making sure that we have business continuity plan, etc. That was enough to show at least to the supervisory authority, in that case the AFM, Autoriteit Financiële Market. It was enough to show them that it was that we were on par. Then in September 2024, we started the phase 2 of the action plan. So here was more the implementation part. So more what I've showed you, such as listing the third parties, assessing their criticality, listing the risk, assessing the risk, etc., etc. In October, we got the audit with the AFM, where it went, well, back and forth. It went quite well. They were actually telling us we were doing too much. So principle of proportionality, we reduced a bit. And from about 80 controls, we downgraded to 44. Hence also these 29 basic controls that you can implement if you're a very small company. And well, December 2024, they received the information, and actually it's only one of the 4 companies in the Netherlands, and there are only 5 companies in the whole Europe. So 4 in the Netherlands. So we have to say the Netherlands is definitely up to par when it comes to crypto assets. So that was just to put a bit more, let's say, practicality on how it is, how actually DORA works and how fast you could get. So you see that actually in half a year you can get things done and you can get maybe your license to operate. I hope that with our webinar you learned a couple of things. You got inspired maybe on how to start with the implementation. I hope you started your implementation and you can complement it and be ready for Friday. I want to let you know that actually we will be publishing very soon an ebook on DORA. And for those who are attending today, feel free actually to ask for a copy. You can scan this little QR code and basically we will send it to you by email. So I'm letting it there for a couple of minutes. If there are some questions, you can, I think, put them in the comment field in LinkedIn. If there are no questions, then that's also fine. It means that I was completely clear and that you learned everything. Of course not, but if you have questions that, for example, come after, feel free to send to me by email, to just contact me directly on LinkedIn. You can send me a private message. So I thank you for actually attending today, for, maybe not participation, but at least for your attendance. I see that we had a couple of viewers constantly, we had viewers throughout the entire webinar. So I'm very grateful for all who stayed that long, about an hour or so, 50 minutes. And well, Friday, the countdown started. So Friday will come into effect the Digital Operational Resilience Act. So I'm curious to know, are you ready for it? If not, and if you did nothing, we might still be able to save you, but you have to contact us today. We do tomorrow. We generate the report, we do the assessment, but that's more or less what we can do in one day. And then, of course, for the running part, that will be a part of a work together, but I'm certain that we will be able to get something. Once again, thank you, everyone. I see that there are no questions, but I thank you again for your attendance. I wish you a very nice day, and I'll see you actually in about a week to see if the world ended after DORA came into force. Thank you, everyone, and have a very nice day.